Are you wondering why your CV has not been selected for interview? Why have you been rejected post-interview and what did you do wrong? I'm Esther Echeverria. I have been recruiting for designers, architects and engineers in Dubai for nearly 10 years. In the Designer Recruiter podcast, you learn from top industry leaders to finally get that feedback and understand what makes them select one candidate over another. Our next guest is a prominent voice commentating on the role of art in interior design on panels at regional events and publication. For the third year running, she has been included in the Commercial Interior Design Power 50 list. Rachael Brown is a co-founder and design director at the Dubai-based arts consultancy Capsule Arts. Founded in 2012, the company has carved a niche role in the Middle East design industry by curating and commissioning arts for hospitality and public arts projects. Rachael, thank you so much for joining the show. I'm very pleased to have you because so far we had architects, interior designers, FF&E. So I'm very pleased to be going even more niche into the topic of arts.
Yes.
So to start with, I'd like to know what led you to pursue a career in art?
Well, for me, it all started with schooling, with education, really. And I think I had an arts teacher who... He was just so inspiring in the way that he led his art classes. And, it wasn't... I think for some people, art is it's done by a substitute teacher or a secondary teacher, but he was a fully focused art teacher and he was very talented himself. And so that was inspiring. But also, I grew up at a time in the UK of the young British artists and, the likes of Damien Hirst and Tracy Emin and Sarah Lucas. And for me, coming from a seaside town, very much a working class town, I remember one day he showed a video of these artists and to be like, oh, they look like someone that, talks like us or just from down the road. Because there's always been, I think, this perception that artists or people that work in the arts are from a more upper class background. And so I think that for me as a teenager was like, okay, maybe this... I had a love for it and a passion for it. And that was the first time that made me think, okay, maybe that is within reach.
Amazing.
So that's what really pushed me, I think, to consider that then, to take it forward.
Which town are you from? Did you say you come from?
I'm from a little seaside town called Great Yarmouth in Norfolk in the UK. And it's a typical UK town where there's a lot of regeneration. It's not one of the most affluent areas in the UK. So it was just inspiring to see people that you thought, okay, a path in arts is an opportunity. Because even today, the arts industry is full of people who perhaps come from a more affluent background or a private education background. So that for me was the first sign of, okay, this is something to pursue. And then my parents were maybe naive or extremely supportive, because when I wanted to then go into to do my university trainings in arts, they kind of gave me full access to be able to do what I wanted. And it just kind of grew from there, really. Once I left university, went on to do my master's in arts management, and then was more focused on kind of exhibition curation, and I worked for a festival in the UK, and then I came to Dubai in 2007 and I've never left.
That was straight after university?
No, I had been working in the UK. I'd been working in and around when I had left and when I was doing my master's. I wanted to do it part-time because I knew that getting the work experience at the same time as doing the master's was really important to me. And then I stayed for about another 2 years working full-time. And I was really at the point of, okay, now maybe is the time to go back to London, because I had studied there for a period of time. And then the opportunity had come to move to Dubai, and I had never done the whole kind of backpack traveling thing. And so I was like, okay, maybe this is a way for me to, explore other countries and other cultures, is to actually go abroad to work rather than doing the kind of typical traveling thing. So yeah, I came in 2007. There was a handful of art galleries at the time, and within 2 weeks I had a job.
Amazing.
I don't think you could do that these days, but well, maybe you can. But definitely 2007 was just before the financial crash, and it was still a boom time.
I think now it's again a boom time from what I see. I mean, we had the difficult COVID time, and it seems to be... so there are more arts opportunity here in Dubai than in the UK or in Europe in general?
I think when I came, there were very few opportunities, but I think if you kind of did the work, the groundwork to find the communities and the people to speak to, there were a lot of opportunities because they were needing kind of experience or background. And I think now, you know, the way the art scene has grown, I mean, we're very much in the intersection between the art and the design communities. I think there's still a lot of opportunity. It's how you go about applying for those jobs or finding the right thing for you. It's extremely competitive in Europe and the UK. And while it's competitive here, I think there's still a lot more opportunity.
I guess that's why, because you mentioned to me before that it can be tricky to go. Is it because of this competitivity, or what do you mean by it can be tricky to go into a career of arts?
I think it starts, I mean, very much how I started my story. To have the support of your family is a really big thing, I think. And you often find these families of artists. And I think that comes because you have that support and that growth. And I did a lot of work when I first came here. I was doing a lot of work with the high schools and the GCSE or the A-level students. And so many times teachers would say to me, that look at their portfolio. They're like A-star students. They're so fantastic, but their families are not wanting them to pursue art as a further education. They want them to be, you know, doctors or lawyers. And if they were open to them doing a more creative path, they were like, but you need to then be an architect or an interior designer, because they could understand and they could see the jobs that came out of it. I think it's even now sometimes, unless a family is exposed to, say, an art career, it's very hard for people to understand, well, what career path could that lead to? So I think your family support is a really big thing. Actually if you do go into an arts education, doing an arts qualification is, you know, I had friends who were in a typical university studying English, for example, and they had 8 hours of lectures a week, whereas it was like a full-time job. You know, you're in the studio practicing from, 9 till 5, 9 till 6, or, pulling all-nighters because you're doing the theoretical work, but you're also doing the practical. And because of that, it's an expensive degree to do, because any artwork that you're producing or you're constantly making, you're having to buy those materials. So it's a very expensive degree to pursue as well. And then when you're at university, they're training you to be an artist. They're not training you to be a business person, or actually opening it up to you of, well, okay, well, you've trained to be an artist, but being an artist is not the only career path. There are so many other jobs in the creative industry. So universities are not maybe very good at the kind of the career development that they could give. And so I think sometimes people leave university in an arts capacity and they kind of go, well, what now?
Yeah.
And depending on their family background or where they live, it's a case of, well, I need money. I need to pay for my rent. And so many people leave art school and they end up in a job in a call center and they get stuck in a call center. It's not, it's always the typical, but it takes a lot of guts. I mean, I had a lot of family support. I was able to do a lot of internships and volunteering, particularly in the UK. I mean, the amount of people with masters that are sat, in those days, stuffing envelopes. We don't stuff envelopes anymore because it's all online. So that, shows my age. But that's where I think it can be very tricky. And I think once then you start, then the world's your oyster. Once you get that kind of first job and you kind of have a clear trajectory, then I think the world's your oyster.
I understand. So to finish convincing those families that are not supporting their kids to pursue a career in art, can you please describe what are the main responsibilities of an art consultant? Because you did mention it's not only being an artist, there is much more to this.
Yes. So for us, I mean, we are an arts consultancy, which is just one, avenue to go down with that kind of background. And it's, like I said, we're very much between the art world and the design world, because our clients are interior designers, or the clients of interior designers, right? So we are we are speciality of the FF&E package. But for something like art, it has such an impact on a space that what we do is we come in and we curate the art collection for an interior design space. It could be an interiors, it could be exterior as well. We also do public realm. So a lot of our staff actually come from a background of architecture or interior design, because for us, there's so many of those specialist skills or understanding of interiors that is required. The use of the softwares as well, like AutoCAD and Revit or SketchUp. So they're using all of those things, but they also need to be able to be storytellers, and they need to be able to curate an art package. What is the art narrative? And for us, it always stems from the design, because it needs to relate to the interiors, and it needs to kind of, whatever the design story is from the interior designers, it needs to bring that to the forefront, but also the brand. So for us, it's really important, because an art package for a Rove hotel is going to be very different to a Four Seasons or a Banyan Tree. And then it's also the destination, because the artwork can be such an important placemaker. So we always want to bring in artists who are local to a project, because they just bring a unique perspective to that space in the art and the way they're interpreting that kind of narrative into the spaces. So for us, that's really what we do. It's a very kind of business side of art. It's very unusual for us to be able to put a conceptual artwork into a space. So something that you would see in a more typical museum setting is not maybe something that you would see within an interiors project. Perhaps it would be more along the applied arts route. But that's where we sit, really.
You take recruitment very seriously, and that's great to hear. And you are soon involved in the Jamil Art Center Career Days. I'm not too familiar with this event, so can you please tell us more about that?
Yeah, it's a great initiative by Jamil Art Center. So it's basically 3 days where there are lots of other art and design organizations who are going to be there, and we're going to be doing portfolio reviews. As well as Deepa and I, my co-founder, are doing Meet the Professionals Day. So it's opportunity for students, but also professionals already within those industries to basically have some face-to-face time with professionals in those industries. We're also doing, Emma, our HR manager, is also doing kind of quick speed fire interviews. So it's a great opportunity for us to meet people that are interested in a career in the arts. And it's basically going back to what I said, it's an opportunity for people to actually really learn, well, what could my future career be if I pursue art? What kind of thing could I do? I remember when I was doing my A-levels, I had wrote to the V&A Museum in London, and they were so gracious to invite me, and I had a tour of the inside, and I was able to see like people doing jobs within the creative industries, within the arts, within the museum environment. And it just gives you that aspiration of, or that understanding of, okay, I can continue to work within my passion, but I don't have to be creating myself. So that's really what this career day is about. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's 3 days. It's the 10th to the 11th of October.
And you did mention that you will also do kinds of interviews, so you might as well hire.
Yes.
They might find their next job on
yes,
this day.
Exactly.
So really important for them. And how can someone find a job now? Let's say, what platform can they use? I think going to those events is usually great, but what other platform can they use, and where do you find your top art consultants?
For us, I'll be honest, it's a challenge. Because we are a specialism. I mean, I speak to a lot of people in the industry, and they struggle to find FF&E specialists. So then the fact that we're a specialism within that, we find that even harder. And it's also very important, because somebody who wants a career in the arts, because we are very much in the business of art, which is different to how a gallery is. You know, we do work on commercial spaces. Somebody really needs to understand what it is that we do as a business, and that it's the career path that they want to go down. So somebody who works in art or who works in interior design needs to be very comfortable with how we're bringing that together. Yeah. So a lot of the time we actually hire people who come from interior design backgrounds because, like I said, they come with that skill set, but they have to have that love of art. Or other times we could be bringing somebody that comes from an arts background, and they've been working in curation and artist development, and so they bring that to the table. For us, honestly, we're always hiring, even when we're not. I think it's really important to be constantly meeting new people, being connected within the community. And I've seen that happen for a lot of people that haven't particularly worked for us, but who have worked in the arts. You know, it's especially in those early days, and it's just as important now to attend events, get to know people, and you have that network. And then when opportunities come about, you're the first to hear about them, or you already have a connection with somebody within that organization. So I think networking is incredibly important all the time, even if you're not looking for a job opportunity. And for us, we also do look a lot internationally. We recently hired a head of operations, and we actually brought him over from America because we needed somebody with a more senior experience, and he had come from an arts consultancy. So it's definitely very tough for us to hire here within this market. Very rarely do we hire somebody that is doing an arts consultant job already. So it's looking for the transferable skills that they would bring, or having that technical skill set.
It's very interesting what you said, because we are taught at school to just go on LinkedIn and apply for a job and wait. But from what you said, and is it true that most jobs are actually not even advertised? Because you did say that you hire ahead, so you might find someone before even putting the job ad. So I think for candidates, it's very important to be, as you said, proactive.
Yes.
But for me, myself, I know, like when I was just graduated, let's say 22, 23 years old, I lacked the confidence to go at this event. I mean, I was like, can I just go and talk to them? So shy. And so do you have any tips for them to attend this event and kind of break the ice and introduce themselves?
I mean, I would need those tips. I'm not very good put in a room of people, so I completely understand where that nervousness comes from. But at the same time, it's very rare that when you actually go up and you start speaking to somebody, that somebody doesn't reciprocate and somebody doesn't, engage in a conversation. I think it's always good to have some pre-prepared questions up your sleeve. If you're visiting an art exhibition, for example, it's a perfect icebreaker. Do you know about this artist? Which is your favorite artwork? Some things that you can just, don't go in there, talking about, do you have a job?
Yeah. Oh my God, please don't do that. No, I love those advice. I think it's much better to first break the ice and make a memorable of yourself, because you don't want to just go and rush. I'm looking for a job. That's amazing. Okay. I consider myself not creative at all. So I'm very curious to know, how do you assess someone's creativity?
Look, I've always said to everybody in my team that everybody's job has an element of creativity. And I remember when I said that to our finance manager when she joined about 5 years ago, she was very confused. And then when we were having a conversation about corporate tax the other day, she was so excited. She was like, this is so creative. I was like, okay, pretty, you're taking that a step far. But I think curiosity is such an important element of creativity. And for us, we're constantly asking ourselves, how do you measure creativity? Because for us, it's such an important element of what an art consultant does. And curiosity has to be there. How you develop a concept. For us, our industry is filled with people that selected a picture of an artwork off Pinterest, and they put it into a render, or they put it into a spec, and then we receive an inquiry to execute that. And for us, that's not how we go about things. For us, bringing originality to a project is really how we can show our creativity and how we can push that, how we can, you know, develop a narrative and how that narrative can be interpreted through art. Whether it's something that is very literal in the storytelling, perhaps a photography, you know, might be more literal, but then a textile piece or a three-dimensional artwork might talk more about the materiality or pattern making. You know, so concept development is really important. How an art consultant can take, you know, the inspiration of a palm leaf and how they can then carry that through into an artwork concept. So that creativity element is very important for us, but it's also about how they edit themselves, right? I've seen art consultants come with, you know, a mood board that's just so full and they've got so many ideas and they've been extremely creative. But then it's about, okay, how do you now rein that back? And how do you then bring that into a succinct idea that clearly expresses that narrative in a way that everybody can feel it. They can experience it through, you know, the visuals, the touch, the senses that you get from that artwork. So that for me are really big elements of what I look for when I'm looking for an art consultant.
Okay, so what specific question do you ask to measure that they are able actually to provide on this point?
Well, there are several things. So obviously there'll be the kind of questions that we will ask within an interview, and obviously we ask them to share with us their portfolio. So, you know, we might be, you know, asking them to give us some examples of what they think creativity is and how they've used creativity in their work. But we will always give an exercise. Okay. Because you can look at the portfolio and you can be really impressed by that. But it's not until you actually see perhaps a task that they've done that you start to get a real understanding of how they would perform in the job, especially, like I said, because we're very rarely appointing somebody that's done that job before. We're looking for somebody that's got the transferable skills from what they're currently doing and how they can apply that. And if they've got that kind of that eagerness, that passion and that curiosity, you can see then how they develop that further into, you know, and how that pushes their creativity in a presentation that they do for us.
So it's nice to understand why you ask for the exercise, because some candidates are a bit complaining, because most of my clients are asking for design exercise, whether it's art, FF&E, architecture. They're like, maybe they just gonna use my work later on, or they don't see what is your point of view actually in this case.
We've never done that. We've never I have took somebody's proposal that they did and they got the job, and then we used that because they'd done such a great job. And the task we'd given them was an active project at the time. But no, we wouldn't do that. There is ethics within this business that we all have to work towards. It's purely an opportunity to see how they, for us, it's not just how they would perform in a job, but how they understand the job. Because the amount of times I've interviewed people and they don't really understand what they're interviewing for. You know, that they're kind of got a bit of an idea of the job, but they're maybe not 100% sure of what they would be doing on a day-to-day basis. So should they come and
ask you lots of questions? Is that okay in this case? Because sometimes they will do their search beforehand, but they will not find all they need on the website and all. So is it okay to ask you lots of questions during an interview?
I think it's good to ask some questions, but I think you can always tell by the questions how much research and how well prepared they are. Right, so you need to be prepared for an interview. You know, I've had people slip up in an interview and straight away it's like, nah, because there isn't that element of preparation. There's so much stuff out there about Capsule Arts that you can know what it is we do. I mean, all I have to do is ask AI at the moment to write a paragraph about Capsule Arts, and they can give it to me. So there's a lot of stuff out there. So for people to be able to come to an interview and to not know what we do, it's kind of not acceptable. But if they've got specific questions about the job role, then absolutely. Like, I love it when people, like, I've even asked questions before where I've said to them, like, okay, so you get the job, what will you do in your first week?
Oh, yes.
You know, and it's interesting to see how, like, what people's perceptions are of how they would start their week and what they would do. It's interesting how they answer that from a team cultural perspective, as much as it is the actual work. So it can reveal things. And I've often asked, I will often ask, how do you see that we differentiate ourselves to our competitors? And often people won't have done that element of research as well. They perhaps don't have an idea of the arts consulting industry and where we sit within that. So preparation, I think, is really important. And unfortunately, I do think some candidates don't go that extra mile these days to really understand what it is that they're applying for.
Yeah, I can see that as well. And especially because it's a candidates market, they just get so many interviews and they just want to go and check what's best for them without putting in the work, where at my time we used to actually, for me, if I had a job interview, I mean, it's the most important thing for me, my next step in my career. So I don't want to fail. So I would do anything I can.
I think the other important thing is when we have a lot of art consultants within the company, right? So you have a lot of people that may be at the same grade level. And it's really important to the current staff that if you're hiring somebody new in, that they've had that test so you can see where they sit within the team. Because if you're bringing somebody in at a senior level, and when they actually are in the job, they're performing under what, say, a mid-level art consultant is, that's not going to do any good to your team who are currently with you, who currently, are invested in the company. So sometimes I feel those tests are also there to ensure that you're entering the company at the right level position, which is not only fair to the team, it's also fair on the expectations that you have for that employee joining into the business. And my last thing would be, please make sure you spell check. The amount of presentations I've seen when we ask to do these tasks and there isn't that level of attention to detail. And what we do, it's all about attention to detail. So if you're not carrying that level of presentation through into a test you're doing to get a job, what are you going to do when you're in that job and you're doing a presentation for a client? So that absolutely is a must.
That's a great advice. Even for the CV itself, I got candidate being rejected and they have an amazing portfolio and they did a spell mistake like in the title. I'm like, seriously? This is not possible. Now it's a bit of the award season and it's been a lucky one for you, I can tell. CID ahead, you've won many awards, best use of art in interior design. At the CID, and you won an award at the head as well last week. So how important are these awards for you, for your business, but also for your employees maybe, or for people out there that want to develop their career? Yeah,
I think, the awards are important. I think if you ask anybody in the industry, and it's interesting the amount of phone calls we've received since having won some of the awards this past month, and to the point where I've been quite surprised the impact that the awards have made. But honestly, they're so important for the team to get that industry recognition. When we won the Ahead Award last week, Argavan, my senior production designer, I've never seen her jump up on a stage so quick, and I was so happy she was there to be able to accept the award because they work so hard, and it really does mean a lot to them. Unfortunately, we're not able to have all of the team there on awards nights, but we'll, have a celebration within the office. And it brings so much joy to everybody in the office, and, all that hard work pays off. And I think it's just great for them to feel that they're in the right place and they're working for an award-winning company. And it's great for talent attraction as well. I think when it comes to recruitment, we also spend a lot of time on, how do we attract the right talent? And I think when you're doing great work and you're winning awards, I think it brings that attention on you naturally. And so as we've grown as a company and as our marketing and communication has widened, I think our level of applicants has also increased in their kind of experience and the quality of their applications.
I understand. Yeah, it's good to attract talent, but if someone, when you are hiring, if you see two CV, one has been an award-winning, like best design of the year, and one is not, will it influence also your decision? Is it good also for job seekers to be awarded?
I think yes, it is. Of course, you know, it means that their work has been recognised. You know, exemplary within the industry. Unfortunately, sometimes budgets are in place, so sometimes that can have a budgetary impact, and perhaps you're not looking for that at the time.
Yeah.
But obviously, and I think it's a good thing for people looking for jobs that is a negotiation tool for them.
Yeah.
But then you have to also understand what is within the company's expectations at that time as well, and what they need, because everybody would love to hire, you know, award-winning people, but sometimes the budgets perhaps are not always there at that senior level, or perhaps somebody, you know, people need someone a little bit more junior that has got room to grow within the organization. Because for us particularly, because it is such a specialism, and we always have to do a level of training, even when we've brought in an art consultant from another company, because we have such a specific way in which we do things, there's always a level of training. So you also want somebody that is not, for example, like rigid in a way that they do things. You want somebody that is flexible and open to kind of working within the parameters of how we strategize or how we approach things. So that's also important.
You mentioned budget, and lots of candidates are asking me, Esther, what should I say when they ask my salary expectations? I really don't know. So first of all, do you ask this question? And second of all, in the first interview, or is it coming later down the line? And do you have any tips for them?
We always, well, first of all, majority of the time we always include our salary expectation range within the job advert,
that's good.
because it gives that expectation. We don't want to waste people's time. And then we'll always do a first round like phone call as a screening, and we will always ask that at that stage, because it just helps set that expectation for them and expectation for us. Because even though we put that range in the advert, sometimes we still, you know, we'll get people apply and they're looking for double. And maybe, you know, they've got more experience than we actually require at the time. Maybe sometimes, you know, we just don't have the budgets to allow for that at the time.
I'm trying to educate on that, because I have a lot of candidates telling me, okay, I understand I'm over budget, but let me go to the interview. Maybe I'll convince them and they can hire me. And I'm like, no, you will waste everyone's time. That's why we have a budget. So I think they should really stick to what they see, and don't hope that, or worst case, they can maybe reduce their salary expectation at the beginning. And maybe when they are 1 year, 2 years with you, they will see potential growth and I'm sure salary rise. But to ask more salary when the budget is strict is a bit of... waste of time, I think, for everyone. Yeah,
and honestly, it's just always good to be open about those things.
Yeah.
Because if somebody doesn't have the budget, they'll be open with you about it. There's no point, you know, kind of underselling yourself and then when you get the offer retracting and not taking it because you don't want the salary, you know. So you have to be fair on all fronts. We have to be fair to the person we're looking to employ, and they have to be fair to the employer.
For sure. Back to your journey. When did you decide to start your own company, and why?
So I had been working in Dubai about 5 years.
Yeah.
Capsule Arts just turned 11 years just last week.
Happy anniversary.
Thank
you.
And Deepa and I had been working together for about 5 years, but doing very different things. So Deepa came from a background, she studied in interior design, and then very quickly she focused in art consulting as a specialism within interior design.
Deepa is a co-founder.
Yes, she's my co-founder. Whereas I had trained as an artist, like I said, worked within arts curation and programming. And then I had come here and I had been working within a gallery, and had been doing kind of mostly working with exhibition curation and working with artists. And at the time, the Dubai's art scene was still quite young. And we were seeing so many young artists, emerging artists starting to come up. And they weren't always necessarily getting a lot of opportunities within the gallery scene, because the galleries understandably, were working a lot with artists of the diaspora. They were, they had set up a base here because Dubai was such a fantastic hub for them to do international business. And they had a kind of local interest, but they weren't really representing any of local artists. Now things are changing. And so we felt that there was this pool of artists that we really wanted to work with for projects. And so Deepa and I decided to join forces and to start Capsule Arts. And it was a bit of a different way of doing art consultancy back then. Art consultancy, majority of people were selecting artworks from a publishing print company book and framing it and installing it on the walls. And so what we did was we came in and we kind of said, okay, well, we can do that kind of element, but also we really want to work with local artists. They can bring something new to your project. The hotel scene, I mean, we work predominantly in hotels, but we also work across many different industries. But there was now starting to get an influx of more and more hotels were opening, and they were all looking at differentiating themselves to a greater level. And art was just such a fantastic way for them to do that. And so it was a good time for us to do that as a business and to grow that. And so that's why artists have always been a very key part of what it is that we do.
Amazing. Can you give some tips for someone that want, not necessarily in art, but someone want to switch their career or quit their job and start their own business? Because I have myself a company for not 11 years, but nearly 5 years. And I know, I can tell for sure it's not for everyone. So what are your top tips for, before first of all making that decision to quit their job, what are your top tips to start a company?
Yeah. Well, top tip, I think, before you decide to start is, my husband's also a business owner, and when we decided to do it, you have those nerves. And he said to me, majority of business owners fail at some point, and that's okay. It's how you take that failure and what you learn from it and what you do next. And he also said, if you do fail, it will not take away from you your years of experience. You will be able to walk into a job and you will be able to earn a salary and you will be okay. And it gave me an enormous amount of kind of calmness to be like, yeah, that's absolutely true. It doesn't take away the years of experience of what I've done, and I can always find a job. So that's the one thing.
Pressure reduced.
Reduce the pressure. I think, and we were talking about this earlier, HR is definitely one of the hardest things about owning a business. Sales is difficult. It will always be there. It will always be something that you need to drive for. But the people are such an important part of your business. They interact with your clients. It's the environment that you're in every day. I definitely think when you're starting, the instant idea could be, okay, well, I need an assistant. But actually, I think when you're starting a business, your first few hires should be more high-level staff, because they will take so much off you that you will be able to do more and you will be able to grow the business more. So at the point where Deepa and I decided to really grow the business about 4 or 5 years in, somebody had said to us, do you have a job or do you have a business? He said, if you have to be there in order for the business to run, you have a job, you don't have a business. And that was a big moment of realization. And it's taking time, but ever since that moment, Deepa and I, every day, are trying to do ourselves out of a job.
Are you succeeding?
We're getting there. But it's very much for us that let's be honest, you start a business because you want more freedom of your own time, and for us, a lot of the time when we start a business, the business is a huge passion. You're a motivated person, you want to succeed, you want to grow, you want to do better. But it's at some point you have to really start taking those steps to be able to hand over certain responsibilities to somebody else. So hire people that know how to do things you don't. Hire, because when you start a business, you will not know how to do everything. You will have a particular area that you are very good at, that you are specialist at, and that will really drive the business. But you may not be an expert in finance and running your accounts. You may not be an expert in marketing. You may not be an expert in logistics or operation management. So hire high level that can take some of that work off, and then you can just focus on growing the business, and then hopefully be able to take those 2 months holidays that we all dream about.
God, I dream of that, but that's exactly where I am now. I'm just thinking, I've been growing my business very slowly and carefully because I don't want to have too many employees, not even enough work. But my struggle now, and I have the cash flow, the finance to hire someone very much more senior. But it's about my personality also, yes. How much I want my client to be very satisfied and to have the level of expectation that I have for myself as well, and trust the people. And I think that's the most difficult thing, is not only to take 2 months holidays, but also to trust the people that are in the company. You
have to be able to let go of some of the reins. Otherwise, you will only hold yourself back. So yeah, that's an important lesson. It's a hard one to learn, though. Still learning it. Okay. I took a 6-month period when I just had my baby. I was telling you, he's just turned 1 year.
Congratulations.
And to take 6 months away from the business, is a really big thing. Still at this time, it wasn't a vacation. It wasn't one of these vacations, because I felt like I was learning to do a new job that I'd never done before every single day. But, that was a really important element for me, that, it took a long time for me to actually become a mother. And so at the time when I was finally able to do that, it was really important for me to be able to take, a good break from the business to be able to take care of him.
So it's good, you know how to manage your priority, basically. And for 6 months, I guess that was it. And now you are back to work for 6 months, I guess. It's 1 year. How do you balance the two now, the work life and the mom life? Because I guess they are two very important ones. So.
Yeah, I mean, I would love some advice from someone that's perhaps further down the road from me, and Deepa has too, so she's a good support in helping me realize that. Honestly, I have a village around me. I have a village at home, and I have a village in the office, but it's definitely a challenge. I have to make peace with the fact that I cannot be everything to everyone. Some days I will be a great mother, and I will be a rubbish business partner, and I will be a rubbish wife, a rubbish friend. And then other days I'll be a great business partner and won't be there for the other things in my life. And that's something I have to be comfortable with.
Yeah, I think I'm there as well. The balance is really hard to find. I mean, there is always this guilt somehow when you are too much at work and you see your kids growing too fast. And I think the last thing we want is one day, because what I hear the most usually is, if I ask someone a bit elder than us, what is your main regret in life? Yeah. It will not be like to not have won this award, or to. Yeah. It will be usually it's like to have worked too much, or to not have given priority to the right thing, which is really, really scary. Now for other moms that want to take 6 months out of work, or 1 year, 2 years, even I have some candidates, they've taken 5 years because they had 4 kids or even 2 kids, but and they want to go back to work. What are your top tips for them?
I think there are so many opportunities these days to get creative with like how you put together your CV. At the end of the day, people who are hiring want to see that if you've applied to them, you understand, what the company does, perhaps where you could fit in, where you would bring value. And so I would say be focused on what kind of company you want to work for. And yes, you can show your past work, but also talk about what it is that you've done in that time that you took a break. You know, if you're a mum and you're handling 3 kids, your organizational skills will be amazing, maybe better than somebody that has been working those past 5 years. So there's a way to, I say, transferable skills. What skills have you been using while you've been a mother? Also, have you took any training? Have you took any courses during that period? You know, to be able to say to me, look, I've been wanting to come back to work. So the past year or the past 6 months, I've engaged myself in this training, this training, this training. To be able to say, you know, because it's like being an artist, right? There's training. Like I haven't drawn since university. I cannot pick up a pencil and I will be, you know, as good as I was in university. It's a skill that you constantly have to practice and train. It's like playing the piano, right? You'd be rusty if you didn't do it for a long while. So work on a couple of projects that self-initiate some briefs of your own, and work on them and say, look, I've been wanting to get back and just practice my skills, and this is what I've been doing. And that shows such thought and such proactiveness that in itself shows a fantastic attitude. And that's one thing we've really had to learn for. Higher on attitude, skills can be taught.
Yeah, 100%. Should they then take kind of a step back in salary? Because let's be honest, if they didn't, okay, they have transferable skills in organization, maybe project management, but how about these years that someone else was actually working every day in art with clients and they didn't? Should they then take a step back in salary expectations maybe for the time they would get up to skills?
I think obviously it depends specifically what job they would be doing. But yes, I mean, for example, 5 years, a lot can change. So if you're talking about an art consultant, the artist that you worked with 5 years ago may not be around anymore. There may be new artists. Like, have you kept up to speed on what the trends are, what the different suppliers are? I mean, it'd be the same with an FF&E. So it really depends on how up to date you've kept yourself in your knowledge, in your experience, in your skill set. But I think be open that you may need to negotiate, because whoever's interviewing you will understand how you sit within the team that they have in terms of your experience level. And you can always negotiate and say, look, okay, I'll come in at that entry level, but let me do my 6 months probation, or at my midway point, my 3 months. Can we look back and can we renegotiate that? And people that see, I think, the benefit in you will perhaps be open to that. But then again, you need to manage your expectations.
Yeah, I think we have to be realistic. As much as I'm a mom myself, and I would love for everyone to, not have any step back in their career or anything like this, we also need to educate and make sure that they know where they enter. And I did place some candidates on a slightly lower salary, but only after 6 months, 1 year, they go back to much higher that they were on, because they have the drive, but sometimes it's about candidate also putting themselves in the shoe of the interviewer, which is really, really difficult topic. Do you have anything that we didn't talk about today? Any last advice for our listeners? Mostly are job seekers in art or design. So any last advice you would like to share?
I think if you have a real interest in a particular company that you want to work for, and you apply for a job with them and perhaps you're not successful that time, I wouldn't write that company off completely. I think it's important to ask for feedback. If somebody asks for feedback, we always give that. And don't be afraid that when the next job opportunity comes up to reapply. In fact, my first job, it was the second time I had interviewed with that company, and I was successful on the second time. And we have actually interviewed candidates on a second time and then hired them that second time. Don't take it as a personal rejection. You have to always remember, you don't know who they did appoint, right? Instead of you. You don't know what that person brought to the table that perhaps you didn't. So it's not necessarily about you. it's about the company and what it is that they're looking for. So you could be the right person the next time they're looking.
Now you put me in a very difficult situation because I struggle to give feedback to candidates. But I'm working on that because I know it's key, and 100% people need to improve. And also they need to know that it's not about them, that sometimes you just find someone a bit more matching the skills, and it will happen on the next time. But Rachael, thank you so much for joining me today. I mean, we learned a lot about this topic and it was really great to have you today.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you.